Somewhere, right now, someone is signing a lease for $400. And somewhere else, someone is signing a lease for $40,000. And here's what nobody tells you. The rent is not what you think you're paying for. At $400, you're not paying for a room. At $40,000, you're not paying for a penthouse. At every single level in between, the rent is buying you something else entirely. Something invisible. Something that quietly reshapes who you are. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 levels of rent, from $400 a month to $40,000. And at each level, I'm going to show you what the rent actually buys. Not the square footage, not the address, the verb, the version of your life the space makes possible. By the end, you'll understand something that took me years to figure out, and most people never figure out at all. Let's start at the bottom. $400 a month. That's not a rent number you see advertised. That's a rent number you find. A room in a house with 5 other people, and a landlord who doesn't ask too many questions. A basement with a ceiling you have to duck under in 2 places. A converted garage with a space heater that you unplug before you sleep, because you read somewhere that space heaters are how people die. Maybe you're 23, maybe 34. The math doesn't care about your age. It cares about the number at the bottom of your paycheck. The room is 8 feet by 10 feet. The bed takes up most of it. You keep your clothes in a plastic dresser that rattles when you open the drawers. You don't have a desk. You work at the kitchen table when the kitchen table is free, which is not often, because 5 other people live here, and the kitchen table is contested territory. You share the bathroom with everyone. There's a rotation for cleaning it. The rotation is broken. Everyone pretends they cleaned it last. Nobody cleaned it. There's always someone else's hair in the drain. There are 3 different shampoo bottles on the shelf, and none of them are yours. Your razor lives in your bedroom, because a razor left in the bathroom is a razor that disappears. You learn these small protective habits without anyone teaching them to you. You learn them because the alternative is replacing things you cannot afford to replace. You hear every conversation through the walls. You hear the couple in the next room fight about money, which is almost always what they fight about. You hear the guy above you play video games until 3 in the morning. You hear the girl across the hall cry on the phone to her mother on Sunday nights. And you pretend you don't hear it. Because pretending is the only privacy available in a house at this price point. Privacy is a luxury good here. Nobody can afford it. You learn to sleep through anything. You learn to eat standing up in the kitchen, because sitting at the table means a conversation you don't have energy for. You learn to hold your keys in your hand as you approach the front door, because the lock sticks, and if you fumble for them, the guy in the front room will come out and talk to you for 20 minutes about nothing. You learn that your room is not a room. Your room is a retreat. You spend more time inside it than any person is supposed to spend inside a room that size. You eat there. You work there. You watch everything there. You think there. The room compresses into a single function. It is the only place in the building where you are not performing. Now here's the part nobody tells you. The rent is $400, but the cost is not $400. The cost is the constant, low-grade erosion of being a person who has nowhere to be alone. You don't realize, while you're here, that this is the cost. You think the cost is the rent. You think if you could just make a little more, get a little bigger, find a little better, the tension would release. It will. Partially. And then it will reassemble itself at the next level, wearing a different costume, asking for a different kind of payment. At $400 a month, the verb is survive. The rent is buying you the bare minimum conditions to continue existing in a city you could not otherwise afford to exist in. Nothing more. That's the transaction. $1,000. You have a studio. For 100 square feet of your own. The first time you walk in with the keys in your hand and nobody else's name on the lease, the silence hits you differently. It's not the silence of a room with a closed door. It's the silence of an entire space that answers only to you. You stand in the middle of it. You feel like an adult for the first time. And you're embarrassed by how much the feeling matters to you. Because the apartment is objectively small. The paint is objectively bad. The fridge makes a sound you will later learn is the sound of a fridge that is dying. You buy a real piece of furniture. Not from the curb. Not from a roommate who was leaving. Bought. With money. From a store. It's a couch. It's cheap. The cushions are already compressing. But you paid for it. It's yours. And when you sit on it the first night, take out on your lap, a show on the television that's also yours, you understand something you didn't understand before. You understand that the accumulation of small objects in a space you control is the physical manifestation of your slow conversion from a person who is surviving to a person who is living. You start having people over. Not parties. You don't have parties. You have one person over. Then two. You cook a meal that isn't good, but it's yours. They eat it on the couch that's yours. And it's the first time in your adult life that you've been the host of anything. The hosting is the thing, not the meal. The hosting. The ability to say, come to where I live. I have a place. You are welcome in it. Now here's what I want you to notice. At $400, the verb was survive. At $1,000, the verb is close the door. A lock on a door is a psychological instrument. You did not know this. You know it now. You're paying every month for the right to be alone. The right to be tired in a room that does not require you to be anything else. The right to host. These are not small things. At this level, these are the whole game. And you still feel stretched. Rent is the largest line item in your budget by a significant margin. Every month, the transfer goes out, and every month, you feel it. A small muscle contraction in your financial life. The reminder that you are paying for this, and that the paying is not optional. But you have a savings account now. $800 in it. You're proud of the $800. And you should be. Because it represents the first time in your life that you've had money that was not immediately spoken for. It's not much. It's everything. $2,000. You have a one-bedroom. A real one. With a door between the bedroom and the rest of the apartment. Which means the bed is not in the same room as the kitchen. Which means you can have someone over, and they don't have to look at where you sleep. You didn't realize this mattered until it mattered. The separation of functions is its own kind of wealth. The bedroom is for sleep. The living room is for living. The kitchen is for cooking. Each space has a purpose, and each space supports the purpose, and the life inside the apartment becomes more organized because the apartment itself is more organized. You buy a dining table, a small one. It seats 4, which is optimistic, because you've never had 4 people to a meal. But you buy the table for 4, because the table for 2 felt like an admission. You put a plant in the corner. The plant dies. You buy another one. You learn that plants are a skill, and that the skill is not expensive but is unforgiving, and that most people at this level are also killing plants and not talking about it. You buy sheets that are not the cheapest sheets. You buy a towel that is not the cheapest towel. You're discovering that the cheapest version of something is almost never actually the cheapest version over time. This lesson, which seems small, will scale upward through every decision you make for the rest of your life. You also start cooking real meals. Not because you have to, because you want to. The kitchen is big enough. The counter has space. You have a knife that isn't terrible. And you begin to understand that cooking is the first thing most people learn to do, well, once their housing gives them the room to learn it. The connection between the space and the skill is direct. You could not have done this at $400 or $1,000. The space was not there. Now it is. And you fill it. Now here's the observation most people miss. The rent is a number you can meet without drama, but it's still a number. And you notice that it has grown proportionally to your income. The proportion has not changed. The percentage of your life that goes to shelter is roughly the same as it was when you were making half of what you make now. At $2,000, the verb is host. You can produce conditions now. You can produce evenings. You can produce the version of a life that looks like a life. You are not spending less on rent as you earn more. You are spending more on rent, in exact step with the earning. And the life is nicer. And the tension is the same. This is the first time you begin to suspect that the tension is the product, not the rent. Before we keep climbing, I want you to pause with me for a second. Because we are about to cross a threshold. The next level is where the rent stops being about you and starts being about how you appear to other people. And once you cross that threshold, you cannot go back. The rent stops solving problems you have and starts creating problems you did not know existed. Keep that in mind as we move up. $5,000. You have crossed into a new category. $5,000 a month is $60,000 a year in rent, which is more than most people in the country earn in total. You don't think about this often, but when you do, the thinking has a specific weight. You hold the weight for a moment, then you set it down, because holding it for too long is not productive. You live in a building with a concierge, a gym with equipment you recognize from the nice gyms, a pool on the roof that you use maybe 4 times a summer, a lobby that looks like a hotel lobby Because the designer who did the building also does hotels. The apartment is not dramatically larger than the one at 2,000. It's larger, but not doubled. What you're paying for at 5,000 is not square footage. It's finish. The floors are real hardwood. The counters are real stone. The appliances are the brands you used to see in magazines. The windows are large. The ceilings are high. Every surface of the apartment signals a kind of quality that you didn't know you could perceive until you started living inside it. And now that you live inside it, you cannot unsee it. You walk into a friend's apartment at a lower level and something feels off, and you cannot name it to them, and you would not name it to them if you could. The light is fluorescent when it should be warm. The counters are laminate when they should be stone. The air smells faintly of the last tenant. You did not used to notice these things. You notice them now. You wish you didn't. But the noticing is not reversible. You are curating now. You're not just living. You're making choices about how the life looks, how it feels, how it signals, what it says about you to the people who enter it. You hire someone to arrange your furniture. You're embarrassed that this is a service that exists and embarrassed that you're using it. And then you see the result, and the embarrassment evaporates. You discover that you don't actually know how to arrange a room. Most people don't. And paying someone who does is one of the first real expenditures of a life that has moved past utility into curation. But here's the hidden cost at this level, the one nobody warns you about. This is the first level at which the social cost of your housing becomes visible. You have friends who make less than you do. They come to your apartment. They don't say anything, but you can feel them calculating. You can feel them cataloging. And you notice that they invite you over less often because their apartment now has to be measured against yours. And the measurement is not favorable to them. And neither of you wanted this. But both of you have it. You start hosting in restaurants instead of in your home. You do not make the decision consciously. You just notice, after a few months, that you have not had anyone over in a while. And when you trace backward through the reason is that the apartment has become an awkward thing to invite people into. The apartment is too much. The apartment is a statement you did not mean to make. And the easiest way to stop making the statement is to stop having people over. The rent has done this. The rent is doing this. And you cannot go backward, because going backward would be a statement. And making the statement would be worse than the thing the statement was trying to solve. $12,000. You're in a full floor of a building, or a house with a yard, or a duplex with stairs inside it. And the stairs are a novelty for the first month, and an inconvenience after that, and a fact of life after that. You have a cleaning person. You have a building with staff who have staff. You have a life that is being partially run by other people, because the life is large enough now that running it alone is not efficient. And efficiency has become a value in a way it was not before. Now notice something strange. You spend less time in the apartment than you did at lower levels. The apartment is nicer than any apartment you've ever lived in. You are in it less. This is not a coincidence. At this level, the life has extended outward in ways that make the home less central. You travel more. You eat out more. You have meetings in other places. The home is a hub, not a container. The home is where you return, not where you live. The distinction is subtle and important. At $400, the room was your entire life. At $12,000, the home is a piece of a life that happens mostly elsewhere. The verb, at $12,000, is delegate. You are paying every month to stop managing the small things yourself, to stop thinking about them, to stop carrying them. The attention that used to go to the dripping faucet, the broken outlet, the stuck window, that attention is now freed. And attention, at this level, is the most expensive currency you have. The rent is buying your attention back. $20,000. You're in a home that has a name, not a street address. A name. The building is known. The neighborhood is known. The address on your mail means something to the kind of person who knows what addresses mean. And there is a whole category of person who knows what addresses mean, and you have entered their awareness without intending to. You didn't move here to signal. You moved here because the space was right. The light was right. The building worked. And the price, while extreme, was payable. The signaling was a side effect. The signaling is always a side effect at this level, which is how people at this level explain it to themselves, which may or may not be the whole truth. The home has systems, climate control that is programmed, lighting that is programmed, security that is monitored by a company, a building engineer who knows your name and the quirks of your unit. The home is maintained in a way your previous homes were not maintained. The maintenance is a line item. The line item is significant. You are paying every month, not just to live in the space, but to have the space continuously restored to a state that resists time. The state does not fully resist time. Nothing does. But at this price, it resists time better than it did at any lower level. And the resistance is part of what you're purchasing. The verb, at 20,000, is signal. You are paying for the address to mean something, for the building to be known, for the name to carry. You can tell yourself it's not about that. And partially it isn't, but only partially. $40,000. This is the number where the concept of rent begins to stop applying in the way it applied at every lower level. At $40,000 a month, you are not a tenant in any meaningful sense. You are a principal in an arrangement. The arrangement involves multiple parties, contracts that are longer than most books, services that are bundled into the rent in ways that no one at a lower level would recognize as rent. A driver, possibly. A chef, possibly, on certain days. Access to facilities that are not public. Access to people who are not available to the public. The rent, at this level, is a membership. The membership is not advertised. You found out about it through a person who found out about it through a person. There is no website. There is no listing. There is a man in a quiet office who answers a phone, and the phone number is not published anywhere. You got the phone number because someone decided you could have it. The decision was not made by you. The decision was made about you. The home itself is a significant asset, even though you don't own it. Its address opens doors. Its provenance opens doors. Its presence in your life opens doors. You are paying at $40,000 a month, not for shelter, not for space, not even for finish. You are paying for the network of implications that the home carries, which is a thing you can only pay for at this level, and which is a thing that only makes sense to purchase if you are in a position to use the implications. And here is the strangest thing about this level. You do not feel rich here. You feel ordinary, because everyone around you is paying the same kind of rent, or more. The baseline has shifted so completely that your life, which would look like a fantasy to the person at $400, looks to you like simply what a person does. The reference point adjusts. The reference point always adjusts. That is how the ladder keeps working, because nobody at the top of it feels like they are at the top of it. The verb, at 40,000, is access. You are not paying to live somewhere. You are paying to be part of something. And the something is invisible to almost everyone who has never been inside it. Now let's pull this together. At 400, the verb was survive. At 1,000, close the door. At 2,000, host. At 5,000, curate. At 12,000, delegate. At 20,000, signal. At 40,000, access. At every level, the home was doing more than providing shelter. At every level, the home was producing something beyond the roof and the walls. And the bill, every month, was a transaction with a specific layer of what a home can do for a person. You were not paying for square footage. You never were. You were paying for a version of your own life that the space makes possible. The square footage was the vehicle. The life was the cargo. And the cargo, at each level, was different. The room at $400 and the penthouse at $40,000 are not the same kind of object. They are not even in the same category of object. They are two different kinds of answer to the same question. And the question is, what does a person need from a space in order to be the person they are trying to be? The 23-year-old in the room with the space heater is trying to be alive. The person in the penthouse is trying to be something that requires a penthouse to be. The verb changed. The verb changes at every level. And the verb is what the rent is actually buying. The rent is always buying the verb. Somewhere, right now, someone is signing a lease for $400. They are in the leasing office, or in someone's kitchen, or on a website they don't fully trust. The signature feels like a decision. It is a decision. It is also the beginning of a sequence of decisions that will, if the sequence continues, produce a person who signs a lease for $40,000 a month and does not flinch. The flinching stops somewhere in the middle. The flinching stopping is not a victory. It is a change. The person who does not flinch is not better than the person who flinched. They are different. And the difference was paid for, month by month, in rent. And the rent, at every level, was always the smallest thing on the invoice. It always starts at 400. If this video made you rethink what you're actually paying for every month, hit subscribe. Tomorrow we're doing every level of income, from 0 to 10 million a year. And the numbers are going to tell you something you weren't expecting. See you then.